Welcome to another episode of The World According to Gwen. Um, to be honest, I don't know if this is going to go on the Relationships or Sacred Ground playlist or if I'm going to make a new playlist. I just know that I got to talk so that I can keep my head together. Um, so, I've told you, right? I've been in these tumultuous throes of a relationship. First one in a I say a very, very long time, but at least a year. I spent some time with somebody a year ago that I had also spent time with 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Anyways, that is a little bit too much information. So, this relationship, and out of respect and honesty, no, respect for him, I'm just going to refer to him as my mate, even though he currently has gone back to a former girlfriend. My heart's not totally dissolved of everything yet, and I just gotta go with it. And I'm gonna use this YouTube platform as a kind of a cathartic way to get it out, and maybe what I say can be of help to somebody else out there. Um, Life is such a trip. So, I want to give a background here, and I'm going to try and keep this video to only like 15 or 20 minutes. I didn't like having the 40-minute one. Okay, here we go. What do we got? So this particular, I'm trying to decide where to start. Okay, I'll go ahead and I will start there. When I was like 13, 14 years old, I remembered watching this movie called Dead Again. And it had Robin Williams in it, and it's about a man and a woman and a murder case. And somehow this man and woman end up getting to have to talk to each other through the murder case, and it turns out that through I don't even know what, they all realized that they had shared a past life together. And I rewatched a snippet of the movie not so long ago, but just a snippet. I thought I wanted to watch the whole thing, and then I was like, it's a murder case. I'm not really in with that, and I got a gist of the whole soulmate thing anyway. So I didn't watch the movie again. But as a young kid, mind, power of mind. I'm a young kid, and that was my first experience, introduction, input, whatever you want to call it, into an idea of past lives. And maybe not exactly my first experience, but it was one of the very early ones. And definitely this whole idea of soulmates and that love carries through the ages. Had my first boyfriend, loved him desperately. He loved me too. We were kids. We did things that kids do, but it also got treacherous. And because, like, with him was when I started drinking alcohol, I started smoking pot, I started having sex, I started lying to my dad, sneaking out of the house, staying at a girlfriend's house so he could come over because she and her family were out of town. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff. And but that was when I labeled myself as a bad girl, and smoking cigarettes was definitely the thing that made me a bad girl. More than the alcohol, more than the pot, more than the sex, it was smoking cigarettes. And I did not realize that for probably about almost 20 years. I hated that I smoked, and not drinking alcohol was not a problem for me later. Not smoking pot was not a problem for me, but the cigarettes, they were hard for me to let go of. And the way that I did, in case it serves anybody, was one time I sat with my cigarette, and I'm sitting outside and I'm smoking, and I looked at my cigarette and I said, "Why do I love you so much?" And I tell you, the first thing I heard in my mind was, "Because I'll never leave you." And I was like, no shit. Like, that's what this is all about? And I kept on smoking for another, I don't know how long. And then I was getting like more serious about quitting and maturing, and just life processes going on. And I was sitting outside thinking about my life, and that I was just not happy with where I was or what I was doing or what my current projection was. And I was like, well, shit, what am I going to do? And more so because I'm kind of a reflective person, uh, I was like, well, where did I go wrong? Like, when did this start? Like, my life being so off track from what I thought I wanted it to be. And I was smoking a cigarette, don't you know? And I was like, fuck, like I still smoke cigarettes. And then it occurred to me, thank you, Jesus, I received the inspiration of like, well, who were you before you started smoking? And when I answered that question, I was like, wow, like that was a whole different girl. That was a whole different path that she was going on. And I'm not comfortable sitting here like this. And so once I remembered that, like, oh, I remember who I was before I started smoking. I can still feel the way that I felt about life and things that I was doing. Not that everything was rosy and perfect or anything, but it never occurred to me that I couldn't handle it, and or that I needed cigarettes to get by through the day or hardships. So, so, um, then I quit it really easily after that. It was still a couple more months, but I did easily. And sure enough, I started charging forward with my life in the things that I had wanted to do as a younger person before I ever started smoking. I feel like I'm a little off track, but I don't mean to be. 13-year-old kid, dead again, past lives, soulmates. So, um, I've had some very bizarre experiences through my life that are statistically impossible, and so maybe I'm not a statistician. I should not say that they're statistically impossible. Let me say that they are statistically unlikely that someone would repeat the same pattern with so many of the same factors again and again and again. And for me, it was a total of 3 times, but the initial pattern was set as 13-year-old girl with my first boyfriend. And so now here I am, an older woman. I still have that teenager that lives inside of me. And, okay, I can go there. So, I'm sorry. And see, this is one of those things that the mate was right about. He was like, well, you'll be talking, and then you'll deflect, and then you'll get off here, and then you'll get off there, and you're just not coherent, and blah, blah, blah. And he would use that as reasons to make me feel like I was a ding-dong idiot and didn't know what to do, just because sometimes when you're talking about things that are deep and personal, it's a little bit hard sometimes to let them out, even to absolute, total, and complete strangers on YouTube. The reason I'm stuttering around this is because I'm not exactly sure where to go next, but this is where we're going to go next. Next is 13-year-old kid believing in soulmates. Desperately in my life, as I approached romantic things, I was like, oh, I want my soulmate, I want my soulmate, I want my soulmate, I want my soulmate, I want my soulmate. And I want to back up, and I want to admit that when I was 13, 14 years old, and I was getting ready to leave my mom's house, and I was going to bed one night. I just told my mom some things, and I remember I go in my room, I close the door, and I heard it clear as a bell, but you know I love you, Gwen. And I heard that voice, and I laid down in my bed, and I was like, wow, like I don't know what that was, but I know I heard it. And that stayed with me. And I did not hear that type of voice again until 1998. And my mate and I were, not today's mate, old mate, who's now passed on. Um, we were parting company, and I had just read the book Conversations with God, and I was super inspired and encouraged about everything to go forward in my life, even though I was in such a traumatic time. And I had, I don't know if I had a new boyfriend or I was thinking about a new boyfriend, but I heard that voice again ask me, "But can you be happy alone?" And I was like, of course I can be happy alone. You know me, I can do anything. I can be happy alone. I don't have to be in a relationship. And I had almost always been in a relationship from the time I was 13 till however old I was in 98, 25, 26 years. So for those 10 or 12 years, I had like almost always been with somebody. I had not spent very much time alone. It was really, oh, it was just a really sad situation. And we'll go into all that later if you hang around with me. But so can you be happy alone? And those are the last times I heard that voice. And I always attributed that voice to the voice of God. And at that time, I was also very, I read a verse in my Bible about, you have no idea what God is doing in somebody else's life. And if you're praying for your husband that you want, your wife that you want, your child that you want, your job that you want, whatever, to operate with some patience and some compassion, because you have no idea what that individual is having to go through before their life comes and meets with yours. And I was really hardcore about I want my husband, not just my soulmate, but my husband, and the my soulmate that is my husband, and yeah, and so and I can remember praying earnestly for that, because I was just going through those phases of things happening in your life that you really didn't think were going to happen, and how treacherous it can feel at times if you're not really ready to go with the flow. And so I can remember praying for him, whoever he was, and that that's this is some of the heart of me and the way that I am. Jump forward, because this is almost 15 minutes long, and another dozen years or so. You know, that's kind of funny, because I think it is along the dozen year line. That's the orbit of Jupiter. It takes 12 years, I think. My son and his father, and his dad is a raging alcoholic, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is crazy, and I got to get out of here, and we need some help. And so we contacted a psychologist here in town who had us do some personality tests. The father, he did not want to go through with the process and the program, and he was like, I don't need that. And so I went back and saw the psychologist one more time. You know, it's my family, you know, and meaning I was concerned for my family. And he tells me at this time, he's like, well, you know, clinically, as far as we're concerned, in these codependent relationships, the codependent person, which would have been me, is who we clinically consider more ill, because they're willing to sacrifice themselves for this other person who's doing this abusive behavior. And I sat there and I was like, buddy, if you think that for half a second I'm going to sit here and listen to you tell me how sick I am, you're out of your fucking mind. But I appreciate what you're saying, because you're just looking at things clinically, and I, of course, look at things spiritually, and that's a whole different story. But that's what he said. But then the gift that man gave me as we continued through the conversation was, he said, do you realize that you've been attracting these men into your life over the last however many years it was, 10, 20 years. He goes, based on your likes and desires as a teenager. And he said that, and it was like ka-ching, like every light went off in my head. I was like, oh my God, he is so right. And my world started to change after that. Like, it was no problem for me to act like the adult that I was, at least in years, and get my shit together and get out of that house and get on my own and raise my kids. And the next time it came around to looking at men or thinking about men, ooh, you better believe I was looking at them with a whole different eye. It was not 13-year-old Gwen looking at them, or even 14 or 15 or 16 or 17. It was like 30 something. So that happened. And is this 15 minutes long yet? Like, I really want to stop this so I can get on to the next one. Yep, I'm going to. So, pay heed for yourself. Who were you before you started that bad habit? Can you touch those feelings? Because maybe those are the inspiration, the peace inside of you that you need to reconnect with to start taking your life in the direction that you want to go. And are you still viewing things like you did when you were a teenager? And teenage years are really a very important thing, and we will go into those more later on a different playlist. But this is going through the relationship thing, because I gotta keep my head straight or I'm on the verge of losing it, and I don't want to do that. So okay, I'm pausing this one, stopping this one, going on to another one. Thank you. And I remembered it's not a touch screen, it's an old laptop. But it works. Gotta use what works.